All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Growth Insider. Today I'm super excited because I have Garth, the founder of Raynmaker.ai, probably one of the most important marketing automation, sales automation platforms that really helps businesses automate as much as possible, like end-to-end marketing and sales. So Garth, super excited to have you. Do you want to just give people a quick background on your story as an entrepreneur and then a little bit about the company too?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Story is I got started in sales and service at the enterprise level, working at Deloitte and BCG, doing projects for the Fortune 100. And at that scale, it's a lot of contact center or call center work. But always was sort of looking for something a little bit more entrepreneurial and, if possible, a way to get involved more in my local community. So I did what is becoming pretty popular now, entrepreneurship through acquisition or ETA or search. It's got so many names, I don't know exactly where that's going to land. And just over 2.5 years ago, I acquired a small business that was helping local small businesses, home service companies around the United States and Canada execute on their sales and managing everything from lead to cash for those businesses. And then sort of fast forward as AI has started to disrupt more and more of the work that we're all doing. We made the sort of decision, myself and the board, to really double down on investments in that space, and hence Rainmaker was born, and that's where we are today.
Awesome. Before we dive into Rainmaker, I'm curious just on the entrepreneurship through acquisition. The reason being is obviously we have a lot of founders, executives listening who have maybe like exited businesses, even if it's not a life-changing amount, or running like a really great business that they love, but they're at the point where they want to explore other options and stuff rather than like kicking off a business from ground zero. And, that's some of the hardest part of scaling a company. How did you know that that was right for you, and what was the process like for that?
Oh, this could be an entire podcast episode, so I'll try and keep it short. But it sort of really goes back to the way I was raised and with my parents. I played the violin as a kid, and I really wanted to play the saxophone, and my parents would not let me drop the violin until I was as good at the saxophone as I was at the violin. And that might not make sense, but if you think about sort of you grow up in that environment, you can't leave a W-2 job and start at zero. Like, there has to be cash coming in the door quickly with a very clear plan. So maybe to explain it more bluntly, like, my father worked for 36 years at IBM. He is an amazing manager. He has done some of the coolest projects at IBM in his career, but he is not an entrepreneurial risk taker, and that was sort of not how I was brought up. And so I had a lot of 0 to 1 ideas, and executed on a couple of them on the side. And then once I learned about search or ETA, it was pretty clear that that was the path I was going to take. So I did a search for about 5 years on the side, and ultimately found this business.
Amazing. So diving into Rainmaker, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into just the high level summary of what you guys do. Maybe a good way to do it would, rather than just giving the summary, maybe take like a client or something that you've worked with recently where you've kind of been like, wow, I can't believe our platform did that. And
Yeah.
just kind of explain that to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're working with a client. They are usually working with a marketing agency or already have some sort of lead gen that is up and running. And we are, occasionally helping them with that, but generally that's not our bread and butter. So once the lead is created, it comes into the platform. And then we are working that lead and putting them through a sales process. And that means we're doing outbound calling, we're doing inbound receiving calls, we're texting, we're emailing, and sort of engaging with that customer to educate and qualify that lead. And then once they are qualified, converting them into a customer for that local business. And I think that there are a lot of appointment setters out there. So what is really different about this is that we are typically taking a deposit or the first payment of service and either scheduling it on the small business's calendar or setting very clear expectations with that customer about when the service is going to be delivered based on that business's availability. So this is not a set appointment. The customer hangs up the call and is not shopping around anymore. They're not calling any other businesses. They have made their decision and they feel good about that, and know that this local business is moving forward with their service.
That's pretty crazy because I think the problem with like zooming out, just all different options that like local and small businesses have, which is, yeah, agencies, appointment setters, in-house, whether you want to call it sales reps or marketing people. Usually it's like a 1 or 2 man team at that stage. And the missing link is really, yeah, it's one thing to generate interest, but to actually get to the point where there's something scheduled, the cash is collected, the deal is actually closed. There's so much drop off. Of course, like myself, I've just seen behind the scenes at a lot of agencies where they're running Facebook ads and getting a whole bunch of leads for a local business, and there's just massive drop off between the lead to actually getting the deal across the line. So how does your platform kind of like make that problem obsolete, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, maybe to give like a little bit of, before I answer that question, I want to like help viewers understand why this is so hard too. Cause I think it's like, oh, well, like everyone just says, call the lead, like work the lead. Like, why aren't you just doing that? And if you've been in that, there's a lot going on if you're a small business owner. And either you're taking responsibility for that in-house as the owner operator, managing and working that lead, but you're also probably providing services. So maybe you're not available for a bit. Maybe you want to take the weekend off with a family. So that can be inconsistent. If you're a little bit of a larger business and you have a storefront or a location where trucks are driving in and out of, maybe you do have somebody working there at the front desk, but they're sort of juggling multiple responsibilities. What happens when they go out for lunch? Maybe they don't love calling leads. Now you got to sort of manage this person, and that can be great or it can be on autopilot, but it can also be really hard. So I think that a lot of the small businesses that I've seen typically sort of default to one of two solutions. They're either hiring a team in-house, and that's expensive. There's a lot of training. It's tough to manage. Like one client would literally fly to his locations to meet with his 2 sales reps like every other week. And like that was a huge effort on his part to do sort of pipeline inspection. The other thing that I've seen organizations do is hire a VA, sort of low cost. Maybe you have a couple of them. Your speed to lead is higher, but the quality of service isn't as good. And maybe you're only getting to appointment setting. And so that's where we sort of don't believe in either of these systems. And what is clear to us is that consumers are ready to start communicating with AI. Maybe not as much as they're ready to have those conversations with a human, but what we're doing is leveraging AI to have those conversations, qualify the leads, omni-channel outreach, and systematize this process so it is consistent. And I think what sort of gives me pins and needles is, imagine if you had your best sales rep on every single call instantly, 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. Like that is what is coming. And there's a lot that goes into making that happen. I think, some listeners might sort of have disbelief that it's possible. But the technology is evolving so quickly. There's just no way we're not in this world. And I think that the winners in this sort of type of solution are probably going to have 2 things going for them, which might be pretty technical. But first, they're going to have a pretty sophisticated enterprise technology behind this platform so that recursive learning and sales processes are getting better and better so that we do have that best agent on every call. And then in the AI space, it's going to have to be a very efficient workflow to minimize the use of tokens and potentially power in the future.
Okay. So there's a lot there. The first thing that I'd like to touch on is when we were talking before this podcast, you were telling me kind of a story or experiment that you guys were running of like letting, AI agents in your system actually do the calling and have conversations. And in the initial experimentation phase, the leads that were being called would sometimes, hang up and be like, oh, once they realize they're talking with AI, which actually was surprisingly further along in the process than you thought. But what you also told me is that a high percentage of those leads would actually call the number back and have the conversation after they hung up. So it's happening faster than people think, right?
It's happening much faster than we think, because that's exactly the right case. And I think the example I gave is that when we see these people, they call, they realize it's AI. They're like, they don't say this, but I assume they're thinking, I don't really want to talk to AI. They hang up. They're like, man, maybe I can get some information about this business. Maybe I can learn a little bit more and see if it's the right fit. And then they call back and have a 10-minute conversation with the AI and learn about the business, see if it's a good fit. And now we know if that's a qualified lead or not, and we know how to triage that and spend time on it. That's like perfect. What is coming is, we're not going to just sort of be triaging leads, but the AI voice capabilities will close the deal, will ask questions up front, understand the right products, be able to scope it, quote it, provide pricing, handle talk-offs, pricing objections, things like that, take payment, and schedule the service all in a call. So that's how you're going to get that best agent on every call. I think to add a couple other metrics that are pretty fun too is, certainly there are some people that do not want to talk to AI and would rather have a conversation with a human. I think the numbers that we are seeing so far are surprising on how low they are this early in the game. And so we have some tests running in some different markets, and what we're seeing is between a 5 and 12% rate where the human is like, hey, I need to talk to a human. I don't want to talk to AI.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's pretty low.
I was shocked.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess the key part there is actually over time, if you think about like the psychology of sales, because I know a lot of founders are probably interested in like implementing something like this if they're listening. And the psychology of sales, it's like most people don't like salespeople, especially when it comes to a like smaller business, right? Especially like local service businesses, for example. The guard automatically goes up if you're talking to a salesperson as a consumer. And I wonder if part of the evolution of this, of having, AI voice agents actually handle a lot of the sales and marketing for your business, is that people feel more comfortable in a weird way inquiring about the business and opening up about their problems if they're not talking to a quote unquote real salesperson, even if whether they realize it or not. It's kind of like the way you would search Google for answers because you're not talking directly to a salesperson, right?
Yep. I mean, I think it's a great point, and time will tell how that shakes out. I think in the small business space, I think one of the challenges a lot of small business operators have, and why sales have historically been a little bit slower, or in-person visits and this like very customized quoting process, is because not every small business is super clear about what they're doing, what they're not doing publicly on their website. And some of that's probably intentional, some of that's probably unintentional. And so that's why there are these like longer drawn out sales processes. So I actually like to think that what we are doing is really educating customers on if it's a good fit. And then, once there's alignment on it being a good fit, helping to sort of nurture them through that decision-making process. Like if they called the business, like they need this service, they didn't just call because they wanted to chat usually. And so we just want to make it easy for them to make the right decision and give them the information that they can. So I think you're right. And hopefully AI will make that even easier, because it'll be a simpler process for consumers to get information about these businesses.
Okay, nice. So zooming back out to kind of the business as you guys are growing, you're definitely in a position like a lot of, or I wouldn't say a lot, but a lot of like some really high quality tech companies that have built an incredible product, and that it works and you can see all the data and the case studies. But oftentimes a really good product doesn't always translate to easily scaling the business, right? So how is that going for you right now? And what are kind of the challenges you're facing as you continue to add more customers and improve acquisition?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't want to answer it too quickly. I want to do it a little bit thoughtfully, because but there's always challenges in every business. If someone tells you it's easy and there's no challenges, they're definitely lying. I think. What's been really interesting for us is to hone in on our target customer profiles and make sure we're hitting that dead on. I think one of the sort of trends in the small business space, especially driven by ETA, as younger entrepreneurs are getting into these businesses that have been classically owned by older generations, is that they are more tech forward. And so that is something that we are looking forward to and sort of riding that wave together, because this is going to be a tech native platform. And so I think we've sort of been working through the legacy customer base and the call center business and trying to figure out who is the best fit for this future this platform, and who's going to come with us on that ride. I think the other thing is, like, if you go to our website, you still can't sign up for the product just yet on the website. So that is coming soon. And so, we're in a lot of prioritization about what are the critical features to get this out into the market so that it's available as soon as possible, because even at a basic level, it's going to be providing a lot of help to a lot of businesses that just struggle to pick up the phone and deliver a quality message to their leads and prospects.
Totally. And you were talking about kind of the product being available and stuff with your business. Obviously, there was a lot of legacy revenue of how the business looked beforehand. Can you touch on that a little bit? Like when there's a lot of CEOs and founders that have these new products launching and like have blinders on almost to these new products and they really want them to work out. But how important is like legacy revenue and existing clients and retention to scaling a business? I mean, it's obviously critical, but to what level should you balance those two?
Maybe you can ask me again if I don't answer this in the right way, but having this core business that sort of morphed into the technology platform was a critical part of our thesis. It was one of the things that an early stage startup is looking for is like, how do we test out our product? How do we get feedback? The company has done over 15 million B2C interactions for home service companies. Like we know this so well. We know this space inside and out. And we really do know what our customers are looking for. So one of the amazing things that we can be building is building for our current customer base and getting feedback really rapidly. And that's how we have some of these stats, because as we carefully deploy these features into our existing customer base, we get feedback really quickly from the data. And we know what's working, we know what's not. And I think that that's something that, other companies are going to have to do a lot of marketing and sales to catch up on that side.
Okay. And yeah, the feedback is like so crucial, and most like even SaaS companies don't actually collect feedback in the right way. And since there's a lot of technology founders listening right now, what are some of those ways that you can collect feedback, even if you don't have that like legacy model that kind of fits in well for you to be able to have all those data points beforehand? Like, what are you guys doing to collect feedback?
I mean, for us, we have a core customer base where we can get feedback on the product. So that's how we're doing it today. And so I guess the question is, if we didn't have that, what would we be doing? I'll give an example. My dad loves the product. And so every friend that he sees, he makes them test it out. And then he texts me feedback. So at like 11 o'clock last night, I got a text from my dad that was like, hey, I had my friend call in. This happened. I think you need to tweak this a little bit and look at that. And thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. But get it out there as best that you can. I think that's going to be hard. Like we've already had, thousands and thousands and thousands of calls be running through some basic versions of the platform with real consumers to get real feedback, and we are reviewing those.
Okay. Yeah, and like don't get too wrapped up in your own world, I guess, right? Because it sometimes it's helpful just to have like your dad or a friend or your girlfriend like test something, because
Absolutely.
They're so removed from it that they're just going to tell you straight up what's broken or what doesn't work or doesn't make sense.
In the world. Absolutely.
Totally. Cool. So for the goals of what you guys want to do as a company, what do you think is most important over like the next 2 or 1.5 years as you're scaling? There's going to be crazy changes when it comes to the technology that you guys are built upon. So what's going to be the most important thing that you guys get right as you're scaling?
Wow. Time horizons have been really hard to think about with how quickly technology is changing. And I see you smiling. I think that is hard to say. I mean, we have a couple really core capabilities that we are planning to be proving out in the product over the next 3 to 4 months before the end of the year. We've had, based on the initial data that we have, we're incredibly confident in that, and our technology team is incredibly confident in that. And basically, that'd be taking a lead all the way with AI, without human intervention, all the way to cash delivered for a small business. And so, it's sort of like, I think once we do that, it's going to be like, breaking the 4-minute mile or something. Like there will just be this flood of innovation that comes once we prove that we can do that, and it can be done with technology. Part of our thesis is that humans still need to be in the loop into this process to help get these sales done, because every lead matters so much to a small business operator. So that's a near term. You asked sort of midterm next year. I think it's going to be really building some traction with those more technology forward small business operators, like in the entrepreneurship through acquisition space, and continuing to look at the other challenges across the funnel. Like what we've just been talking about here is lead to cash. There's another huge problem in a small business's funnel, and a lot of agency owners and small business operators know this. Like, you spend a lot of money on leads, you get leads, and you don't convert a lot of them. Some of them you may not even get to having a meaningful conversation with. So how are we creating a feedback loop so that we can help small business owners buy the right kind of leads, improve the targeting, and more effectively use their spend to improve CAC to LTV?
Yeah, the feedback loop is super important. And if it's done manually, there's a lot that can go wrong. There's a lot of bias between, a salesperson and a marketer too, oftentimes, if they're the ones giving feedback to each other. And at the end of the day, if you can semi-automate that or improve it with AI and your processes and platforms, that's going to help a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last question I have for you, for anyone listening, because you guys are kind of at the forefront of a lot of this technology and innovation in this space. If there is a founder listening, whether they own a small or local business or whether they own like a really big SaaS company that's mid-market or even enterprise, what are one or two things that they should really be thinking about implementing in the next 2 to 3 months or before the end of the year with this technology? Like what should just be at the forefront of their mind, even if it's not with your platform? What should they be focused on?
Yeah, I think that, there are a lot of spaces where AI is going to create changes. I think we are probably all getting inundated with solutions that at any level of impact, from your personal life to your business life. So for founders and small business operators, I think it's really trying to think through what is their biggest priority and what kind of tool set can they bring in with AI to help their business. And then I think that there are a lot of companies entering this space. And I think that they need to just very carefully evaluate those and make sure that they're not sort of selecting some sort of wrapper company that is just using a quick little prompt without an enterprise infrastructure around that. Because I think we're going to see a lot of companies enter and exit this space over the next 12, 24, 36 months. I think that one other audience I'm going to add in there is for someone, an ETA entrepreneur or someone searching right now. I think in your due diligence set, historically, we were not thinking about AI. But I think now sort of one of the highest order categories in your due diligence process and thought process on that business is either what AI disruptions are going to come into this business area, or what can I bring in that maybe sort of other competitors in my market or in this space aren't thinking about yet.
Yeah, good point. And final wrap up here, where can people learn a little bit more about your business or connect with you? How can they work with you guys?
Yeah, we're at Raynmaker with a Y, Raynmaker.ai. And you can find me on LinkedIn or at Garth Fasano on X.
Perfect. We'll link everything in the description below on YouTube and anywhere else on other platforms. And yeah, thank you, Garth, for coming on. This was super valuable. Really excited to see what you guys do as a company over the next couple of years here. And yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks so much for having me on, Austin, and really thoughtful questions. This was great.